This is it. The final week of qualifiers to decide what the Midseason Madness tournament is going to be looking like. As it currently stands, there's still a spot up for grabs in APAC, and I think both regions overall still have a lot of potential to have the order of the teams change around. I wonder what's going to happen. If it's anything like the last couple of weeks, we'll be in for a wild ride. Let's get right into my weekly preview of the matches, plus some predictions for this final week of the Midseason Madness qualifiers. And starting us off is the Philly Fusion and the Guangzhou Charge. I know I kind of sound like a broken record at this point, but the Charge always feel like this overwhelming underdog. It's this constant battle from behind. There was maybe some moments in like the Chengdu series that were encouraging, I guess, but it's nothing that warrants an upset here. Philly aren't coming off a crazy week or anything, but their general consistency should give them the nod, so I'm gonna say that Philly wrap this up in a quick 3-0. What it truly comes down to, more than anything else here, is the clear difference at support. Farway and Unique just don't do it for me. They lack the playmaking of somebody like Aim God, for example. And that's saying something since Philly's support line really hasn't been perfect this year. Guangzhou just don't have it, man. I really don't know how else to say it. Anyway, that's enough about that, you get the idea. So closing out Friday morning of APAC is the Shanghai Dragons versus the Chengdu Hunters, and this will be going down as one of the most important matches of the week for me. Each team is kind of running through a high right now as they get more use out of the Wrecking Ball, and you have to remember as well that they are both fighting for their spot in this tournament in some way, shape, or form. So I say this could end up being a pretty good matchup. Their comfort picks are virtually the same, right? Their best composition in this tournament by far has been the ball comp with Sojourn and Zenyatta, and you already know that they're going to break it out, so it's a matter of who you prefer in that type of mirror match. For those of you who know me, you already know that I prefer the Shanghai Dragons here, just simply from like a roster standpoint. But also, I mean, this tournament, while it has seen some ups and downs, last week showed us that they still are very capable of making adjustments when they do play poorly. They still do have what it takes deep down to be elite. With Lee J gone back in the lineup and Fate on the Wrecking Ball, the team's general synergy looks and feels a lot more like what we're used to out of this group, and it would seem that this level of comfort has put both Fleta and Lip back into a better groove. If they can carry their momentum from last week into this one, I see no reason why they do not win this game in a close 3-2. However, since it was only 1 week, I'd venture to say that it's reasonable to have this end up being a close match. I think Shanghai are capable of winning it, but it's not going to be a pretty one at times, because again, they're extremely similar style-wise to the Chengdu Hunters, and they've been a pretty good team as of late. These two know each other well. The Dragons could always falter against a tough opponent like this. There's no guarantee that they're truly back consistently just yet. But as a Shanghai Copium enthusiast, I'd like to think that they emanate more of that confidence we're used to seeing out of them. And Fleta's back, you know? If he plays like he did last week, I think he'll be running circles around Jinmu, especially in any sort of Tracer duel. And at that point, I think that Leave might feel overwhelmed if it's him against the world. Shanghai have a real advantage here, and I do believe they're going to capitalize. Moving on to the North American region for the first day, we have the Houston Outlaws taking on the NYXL in that first slot. The Outlaws so far have been up and down, kind of like a lot of teams I'd say, and I kind of feel like we just get a different version of them every single week. One day we might get the team that C9s twice against the Glads, then the next we're getting the version that took down Atlanta. They're a very difficult team to judge. And honestly, this game might not be so easy for the Outlaws. New York ended their week on a bright spot for sure. It could have just been a stroke of luck, but maybe it could be something more. This Doomfist composition seems to be doing something for them, and in general, the boys felt more awake, more motivated. The big problem, at least right now, is that it's just so hard to say if that level of play is sustainable for this group. Like, they're 1-9 this year. They have 11 map wins to their name. And as much as I've criticized Houston recently, they have been relatively competitive even so. Even in the ugly moments, they still have had chances to win. So I think I gotta give this to the Outlaws in a 3-1. If it's New York's plan to match the Doomfist, I don't love their chances. It might be something they're comfortable on, but Houston are just better on it. And also you have to remember that if it comes down to like a Sigma duel, like on a payload-centric map, Piggy's going to roll. So Houston all the way here. Next, we've got the San Francisco Shock and the Toronto Defiant. As much as I want to obsess over Twilight playing his former team and some of the epic marquee matchups we have here, it's just hard to consider this a really entertaining matchup. The San Francisco Shock looks so powerful against these average to below average rosters, which is where Toronto currently stands. I'd love to see them push the Shock, make them sweat if you will, but this isn't the right opponent. If Toronto could barely defeat Paris, it's hard to expect them to push back the might of the Shock. Churong is bound to get overwhelmed by the amazing power of Fin Zhen. It's simply a character he has more experience on. And because the Shock love the Sigma mirror match, the Defiant kind of get outmatched in every way you can imagine, so this has got to be a 3-0 in favor of San Francisco. The Shock are technically susceptible to sandbagging since they already have punched their ticket to Hawaii, and I believe they have that #1 seed locked up, but they've been a franchise that usually doesn't go easy on their opponents, so I don't think it'll be a problem here. Concluding day 1 is going to be the Atlanta Reign taking on the Paris Eternal. There's maybe a little more intrigue compared to the last matchup, as Paris didn't look horrible last week, and you never know what could happen to Atlanta's mental after that embarrassing C9. In general, I'm not expecting much of a contest, but it's still worth bringing up. And you never know, Paris might finally be starting to find the right composition for their needs. If they can perfect their execution with the ball comms, that could really open things up for them. But seeing as they're a 1-in-10 roster, and they're not exactly easy to trust, I'm going to say that this is probably going to be Atlanta's game to lose, They're going to be in control. I'm just praying that Atlanta do not bench Kai in a critical scenario like they did last week. Not a big fan of that. But anyway, this is going to be a 3-1, let's say, in favor of the Reign. They're not a team that I expect to stay down in the dumps, That's not their personality. Their players are very motivated. This kind of loss is only going to make them want to win even more. They have some anger to take out, and I believe that Paris are about to be the punching bag. The Seoul Dynasty versus the LA Valiant now kick us off on day 2, and at this point, it's kind of clear that Seoul are like the true frontrunners of APAC here in the mid-season madness. Their matches have been rather effortless outside of like one occasion so far, and they're going right up against a Valiant team who have been rather inconsistent. Seoul are playing with some supreme confidence, and you really don't want to go against that right now. I kind of see Seoul as just a superior version of the Valiant, More explosive DPS with better results on tank recently. Smurf is going to prove why Seoul moved on from Marvel to begin with, as his team takes the game 3-0. I don't really see what the Valiant can do here. Even with adjustments, they're still playing arguably the best team in APAC. There's nothing they can do better in my eyes, and it's simple as that. Next, you've got the Hangzhou Spark and the Chengdu Hunters. The intrigue here is about equal to that of Chengdu versus Shanghai for me. The Hunters are on the rise, and they're running into an opponent that is ahead of them in the standings, but also at the same time, it's someone they can definitely defeat. This is a massive week for the Hunters. They need to win both matches to have a true chance at the midseason madness. Unless Philly blows it against the Charge, I think the Hunters are going to have to go 2-0 here. And what's crazy about it all is it's actually very possible. Like I just said before, they could definitely beat the Spark, but there's a world where they can defeat Shanghai too. They're playing with a fire under them, and you could argue they have been the second best team in APAC during these qualifiers. They're starting to look and feel right at home, and that could be problematic for a Hangzhou team who have maybe been a bit shaky as of late. Last week showed some obvious confusion. I mean, the Changun magic was taking its full effect. Pieces are being swapped in and out randomly when they probably shouldn't have changed to begin with. What's up with that Architect swap? I understand that back in the day he played some Ana and some Brigitte for the San Francisco Shock, but that was a long time ago. We're talking years at this point. Why mess with what was technically working for you, It only disrupts your momentum in the long run. The Spark have been very reliable from a general standpoint, but here in recent weeks, Chengdu have been stronger. Their worst result so far is losing in 5 maps to Seoul. And you also have to remember, again, that going towards the Wrecking Ball and the double flex support composition technically puts Chengdu in the driver's seat here. It has a completely different feeling compared to that previous meeting during the kickoff clash. Now Chengdu have the versatility at tank and the superior support playmaking to grab the upper hand. I'm feeling the Hunters in 4 maps here. I'm really getting worried about the Changoon of old coming back through. He may be onto a new coaching opportunity, but at times it feels like nothing has changed. That randomness factor is very present still. This league is very momentum-based, and Chengdu have a lot of it, while the Spark have kind of ruined theirs recently. So in my opinion, Chengdu are the favorites. And finally, wrapping up day 2 of APAC will be the Shanghai Dragons versus the Guangzhou Charge. No offense, Charge fans, but I'm starting to just be really thankful deep down that this is the last game I have to talk about you guys for a few weeks, because I'm starting to get tired of ragging on them. It's boring at this point, and we just know what's going to happen. And they're going up against Shanghai here, you know? A Shanghai team that has rediscovered themselves. Maybe it was just a lucky week, like I said before, you never really know. But with this being the defending champions, you've got to take their results rather seriously, and in the Chargers' current condition, they do not stand a chance. I'd be pretty surprised if the Dragons don't wrap this up in a sweep. There is zero reason to believe that this game will be close. With Fleta back in rhythm, the Chargers' biggest playmaker so far will be contained, and the Shanghai backline is just way better. We can't sugarcoat it here. This is a blowout. Running back over to NA, you've got the Vancouver Titans versus the Washington Justice. Not gonna lie, I could actually see the Justice having some trouble here. The Titans are hungry for a W, and they also have zero pressure whatsoever on their shoulders. The Justice may be out of the running for the midseason madness, but every win right now is still very important. So it's really not crazy to think there is a possibility they could slip up here. The Titans don't feel like a breeze in their current state. They've been showing a lot more fight this stage. And if the Justice show more of that sloppiness from the London series, and Vancouver maybe has a good game plan in store, this could be up in the air. I would like to believe the Justice do take this win though, and it's for one simple reason. I like their DPS more. Decay and Happy have a greater chance of taking over this match. Tracer Sojourn arguably works even better for them because, you know, Decay and Happy, they can be superstar level at their best, and these are like some of their signature characters. The Titans are maybe a bit more favorable in like the Doom Mirror, but that won't really matter if the Justice continue to just change up their composition depending on the map type. The Justice would have to throw hard and willingly take that mirror over and over again, and I just don't think they will. So I say the Justice win 3-1. They know their strengths, right? Well, at least I hope they do. They're a better SIG, Ball, and Rhine team arguably, and it's not really up for debate. The Justice have the better flexibility, and I think so long as they stick to their map-dependent swaps, they're going to avoid getting clowned on here. Next, we have the Houston Outlaws taking on the other blue team, aka the Boston Uprising. I think the main point of emphasis that draws attention to this matchup is seeing how the Uprising play after being the victims of a reverse sweep. Will they look defeated out there, or are they going to be more motivated than ever? My guess will be the first choice. I think that they were maybe a little lucky to run into Florida when they did last week, because they have been so up and down and they've been playing so many good teams. Houston in general are stronger, and they have higher potential, and they have generally feasted on these weaker opponents. My thoughts from the New York series essentially get plugged right into this one. The Outlaws are a stronger Doomfist and Sigma team, and those things happen to be Boston's bread and butter. I'm curious to see how the support duel turns out, as I think that could be a pretty even match, but everywhere else, I'd say that Houston is pretty favored. Let's go with a nice 3-1 for the Outlaws. I would love nothing more than to see like a Crimzo revenge tour here, but it's so tough to see that happening, because Crimzo himself, while he might have a great series, it just seems like it won't be enough as this Boston team are generally outmatched. Finishing up day 2, you have the Florida Mayhem versus the LA Gladiators. In general, I find some of these matchups in the series to be pretty cool. Two of the best rookie tanks going head-to-head sounds like an absolute blast. And what about Exy versus those Glad's DPS players? It's a good time from like an individual standpoint, and if the Mayhem Stars do have a great day, then maybe there is some upset potential here. The thing is though, from like a team standpoint, the Glads are just in a better place, you know? They can take better advantage of all the map types out there. Florida aren't afraid to play anything either, but the Glads have the better execution, and this especially goes for recent weeks. Now, to give Florida some credit, their schedule during the midseason qualifiers has been very, very tough. I'd say arguably the hardest. They've played pretty much every top team in the region. It's worth cutting them some slack for sure. However, they still did lose all of those games pretty badly, whether we like it or not, and if they can't beat Dallas, London, or San Francisco, their odds against the Glads won't be much better. Now, of course, the Glads technically don't have much to play for this week, as I believe they're going to be second place no matter what, But hey, it's always good to get some practice in, right? And like I was saying earlier with Washington, every win does matter in the long run. The Glads are still very much in the running to be the top seed come playoff time. You've got to keep your foot on the gas, and I believe that Florida will learn that the hard way. Alright, last day of matches, let's do this. First we've got Seoul versus Philly. And I'd actually really love to see the Fusion get some revenge for what happened during the Kickoff Clash finals. That would be a pretty poetic way for them to guarantee their spot in the midseason madness. And I mean, technically, Seoul are overdue for a loss. It's been a long time. But you won't catch me dead going for the upset. I appreciate Philly and their ability to stick around and maintain relevance, but like, they are 4-6 on the year, right? And the Dynasty are clearly the best team in APAC as it currently stands. The entire team just has this rhythm to them that feels unbreakable. It's hard to explain, they just play some very clean Overwatch. Everybody on the whole team right now is having these shining moments of brilliance, and when you compare that to the Fusion, they just have a lot of miscues to solve still, so let's go with the Dynasty in a 4-mapper. They've got a pretty good system going on. They have their star playmakers, but everyone right now is chipping in at some point. That DPS rotation as well as Smurf are way too lethal, man. This team feels like they're just gonna steamroll right through into the tournament. They've got a chokehold over APAC, I swear to God. Oh, and if the Dynasty now end up losing this game, you know exactly who to blame now. You're welcome. Concluding APAC, you've got the LA Valiant taking on the Hangzhou Spark. And I'm looking forward to this one for one reason and one reason alone. Chaos. Give me all the confusion in the world. You never know what you're going to get with the Valiant, and the Spark aren't exactly predictable right now in their current state. God, I just don't know what to expect. I mean, it's the APAC region too, right? I don't know. I feel like the Spark should be favored, but how am I supposed to know for certain? Maybe the Valiant end up surprising us somehow. What if they bust out a crazy performance like they did at the end of the Kickoff Clash? They've got access to a couple of compositions that they like, which is great for them. My main concern is what ends up happening at DPS if you're LA. I just feel like the current meta works a lot better for the Spark damage dealers, as Shy on the Sojourn is very deadly, and I do not have that same level of respect for EasyHan just yet. Oh, and the Valiant in general, let's not forget, have been pretty experimental with their DPS rotation as of late. It's maybe lacking that consistency to truly push them over the top. With the Spark, you kind of know what you're gonna get, and I like that. Shy is the hit scan and the snipers and Sojourn on lockdown, while Alpha E is going to take care of the rest. And in an Echo Tracer-centric meta like this, that works great for him. And I really do not like that the Valiant are playing less innovation, as I thought he was doing very well before. So I think I'm gonna go with a 3-1 victory in favor of the Spark. I will say though, if the Spark do continue this support line funny business that we saw, then the Valiant might just take advantage. I really did not like that Architect main support look at all. That is where Molly and Langsa could seriously swing this match in their team's favor. This should be a really interesting match. Enough about that though. Let's finish up the games for the day over in North America, so how about we talk about Dallas versus London? I can smell the upset potential here, ladies and gentlemen. This is a key match of the week, 100%. London is playing with some supreme confidence. I mean, all you do is see smiles when watching them play now. They genuinely are not afraid of anyone, and that's when a team becomes dangerous. That is what made a lot of other underdogs of the past so special. They had the same exact mindset. I like what the Spitfire are doing there, and their abilities, I'd say, on other compositions aside from the Rush have maybe been growing in recent weeks. This is a pretty good test for this team to see where they stand, and it's a seriously winnable game. I never thought I'd say such a thing, but here we are. Dallas almost lost to New York, and in general have not been amazing at times here in the midseason madness, and that's gotta be something we keep in mind, right? They feel beatable. I have liked that Fearless is starting to get more playtime again, but it doesn't solve all of their problems. That double flex support composition, where Fielder has to play more Zen and stuff as well, has been a little weird to me. And maybe Chio hasn't been as comfortable off of the Brig or Lucio, but maybe that's just me. The thing is though, this is the Dallas Fuel we're talking about. They aren't some scrub team. Every week that they go and play poorly, usually the next one they come out swinging. And while London have been excellent so far, they have yet to beat any of the top 3 teams, so to speak, in North America. They've proven they can beat the upper level NA teams, but not the best of the best. So that, plus my strong faith in the Dallas Fuel to bounce back, has me believing that the Fuel win this series 3-2. Dallas pretty much only suffered defeat at the hands of their toughest competition, and while I do respect the Spitfire a lot this year, they aren't quite at that level yet. They very well could make Dallas sweat, and the upset is possible, but I personally do not see it. But that's enough on that. Let's discuss the final game of the day, the classic New York versus Boston rivalry. And in this instance, it actually might be a decent game. Both sides showed some likable qualities in a tough loss last week, and that could lead to a nice little back and forth here. Both of them seem rather comfortable on that Doomfist double flex support comp. I'm expecting some fireworks for real here, and in theory, you might even consider the NYXL more favorable for once. If Yaki pops off like he did against Dallas, there is not a single thing that Boston can do to stop him to me. And like, if they actually let Gangnam Jin continue to do his thing on Zen, he should be able to keep up with Crimzo. But that's the thing, right? That's a lot of hypotheticals we're getting into. Can we really expect that kind of performance again when New York are so confusing? I don't trust it, man. I really don't. New York in my heart are like the better team, but my gut says 3-2 Boston. And my biggest reason for that is the Uprising completely burned me the last time that I assumed a meh team was better than them. Remember what happened in that Paris game? I know I certainly do, and New York have been around Paris level for the most part this year when looking at the big picture, so why should I expect things to be any different this time? Boston may not be a great team, but for whatever reason, they have made these opportunities count all year, so why should I doubt them now? Who knows though, maybe I'll be completely wrong. Anyway, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my predictions for the final week before the midseason madness. If it all comes true, then the seeding you see on screen would mostly be accurate heading into the midseason madness. Philly would scrape in by the skin of their teeth, and the Dragons would pull ahead of the Spark in the APAC region. In North America, the only real change would be that London would end up swapping with Houston due to a stronger map differential for the Outlaws. But I mean, yeah. The midseason madness, it's going to be pretty hype, guys. There's a lot of action to look forward to, a lot of days of Overwatch. It's going to be a good time, and I cannot wait for it to get started. But until then, that's where we're going to end things. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I wanted to thank all of you so much for watching my content. I appreciate you so much for sticking around. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.